This is a meditation for the lunar eclipse in Scorpio on May 5th, 2023. There's much that's come up that has advised us to really speak to ourselves, to our bodies, in a kind way, in a responsible way. Because this is how we let in light into all of the dark places within our bodies and minds to illuminate and bring clarity into oneself and empty oneself of burden and heaviness. And while we're speaking to the body, we are filling it with light. We're going into the body intentionally, seeing if we can detect any fear that arises in this place. And without obeying or doing what this fear tells us to do, we are patient enough to notice in what does this fear arise, emerge, so to speak, become these melodramatic perceptions, projections onto the feeling. And also notice how the feeling fades. It doesn't last forever. It stays for a little while and then loses its form. There is so much about transformation when it comes to Scorpio. Also, crisis comes up as these themes, and the truth is that crisis always arises when we're dreading. We are afraid, and we think we know what's going to happen in the next moment. With this kind of certainty, even though we don't know, we never really know that. And so in a crisis, these perceptions of that we fear so much emerge, and we contract, we resist, we cower into ourselves. And yet we're not quite patient enough to see if this perception outlasts what we are. In a way, that's our greatest fear. Our greatest fear is that life will win against us. The forces of life, everything that happens will defeat us and remain and kill us. And we're afraid of something lasting forever. like a circumstance, like when we are in the face of something difficult, we look at it and we say, there's no way through, there's no way out, this is going to be forever. But we don't realize that everything that appears, especially fear, it will soon transform if we are patient enough, open enough. Scorpio is hugely about transformation. Making this assumption about something that it is one thing, not realizing in the next moment we will be surprised to realize that it's not what we could ever have expected. It is like the butterfly in that way. We don't realize like what will maybe take us by surprise for the better in certain ways. We look at the unknown as this deep, uncomfortable, dreadful thing. However, we don't realize that that is our greatest comfort offered, that could be possibly offered to us. Because it is in our unknowing that we don't go jumping into conclusions, believing that we do know what's going to happen in the next moment. So, in this way, we can be willing to be surprised. This willingness to be surprised is about suspending our beliefs, being suspended in disbelief, in unknowing. Anything that we pretend or believe that we know, it is just that, it's just pretending. It's the imagination. We create it that way. We interpret all forms that only emerge and have their sole reality in consciousness. There's something, whatever we are, the essential is that which precedes and is all permeating in and outlasts all perceptions. It's the eternal life, everlasting life. And this is where real hope is born out of this inherent nature in us of our eternity, our eternal life. Because what we fear the most is that this isn't true. Our fear comes from the deep belief that we are temporary and finite. We are phenomenal. We are perceptions. That's what we're made of. And just like everything else, we appear and are born, and then we disappear and die. We never question whether or not that's true. And do we have experiential evidence of being a perception? Have we ever experienced the appearance or disappearance of ourselves? That which is hearing these words right now, has that ever been absent? We are this space in which everything appears. Everything which appears disappears. But the space is never absent, never dies, never was born, and is uncreated. Modulating itself as all creation. Death is this great test for consciousness to find out what's real, what's consciousness, what's reality, what can never die. And so it sets this appearance of, this elaborate melodramatic appearance of death. Consciousness establishes that. And it's for the purpose of getting us to approach it or be approached by death. And as we approach or are approached by perceptions of death and are overwhelmed with the fear intensity, the sense of fear in our body and in every part of our being, it's like we're really expecting that we know what's going to happen next. We know we're going to disappear. We know that this perception will kill us and take what we are away from ourselves. Take away my life. And we expect that. And then in the non-event of death, it's this delightful surprise, this wonderful surprise that what we feared would happen all along can never happen, will never happen. It never happened. It's exactly what we didn't expect. And this is true for all forms of death, not just the death, the big death. There are plenty of little deaths that are appearances in our lives that fill us with dread and fear. And we struggle against this current. We struggle against the flow. And then it finally takes us by surprise.